What's up, people? It's time to ask ourselves the age-old question of why, but it's not just why, it's why do these men look the same? Now, you may be asking yourself, what men are you talking about? And it all comes back to this picture. Now, I don't know how niche this is, if it is niche at all, but it's the picture that says it's time once again for everyone's favorite game, Leonard Cohen or Al Pacino or Dustin Hoffman. Now, if you don't know any of these men, they may look the same at first glance. Like, if you focus your stare at the middle of the picture, they probably all look like the same person. But if you do know these people, you know that they look different, and they are different. But there is still a similar vibe that ties them all together. Now, I won't be exactly answering the question of why, but I'll just try to debunk it and figure out what is the similarity between these people. And, just to point it out. Now, for those of you who have no idea who any of these people are, this is Al Pacino, Italian-American actor. This is Leonard Cohen, Canadian singer-songwriter, poet, whatever, you name it. And this is Dustin Hoffman, who is also an American actor. Now, you notice that all of these people have similar professions, but they're still not exactly the same. And you may wonder why they're here in the first place and what are the exact similarities. And, the obvious ones are the dark features, the dark eyes, the dark hair. But there is one feature that ties all of them together, and that is the smile lines. You can see they're the most prominent on Leonard Cohen, but they're also very present for Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman. Again, it's not the only indicator of their similarities. They just have the same type of structure in their faces. But before I go any further, I need to introduce a fourth character in this whole thing. And he's not present in this picture, but some people have pointed this out eventually, and this person is none other than Anthony Bourdain. Now, you may or may not see it, but there's definitely a similarity. First of all, you can see those smile lines. They're practically staring at me in the face, and this man is definitely a variation of these men. And these men have the same kind of mysterious look in their eyes. They have the same type of profound gaze that is sort of indescribable. It's kind of like when Diane Keaton was talking about Al Pacino. She was talking about his eyes. I forgot what she said exactly, but whatever she said, it was true. But going back to this whole thing, I did create a spectrum. It has no structure whatsoever, but I just placed these people in the places that I thought made the most sense, just based on vibes. You can tell how much effort and research I put into this. Now, you may notice that Leonard Cohen is the person who is in the center of all this, and that is because he's the person who ties all of these people together. He is the person who looks like all of them the most. He's like a combination of all of these people, and hear me out. For example, I banished Dustin Hoffman to the top right corner, and that's because he's sort of the odd one out of the whole bunch. I feel like he looks like them the least, if that makes any sense. He looks different, but obviously he's here in the first place for a reason, but still, he looks different. And then there's Al Pacino and Anthony Bourdain in the same box, even though I could have technically put Al Pacino above Anthony Bourdain or anywhere else, but I feel like it kind of makes sense, and Anthony Bourdain is the closest to Leonard Cohen. And this is sort of like, you can see it as a diagonal line, kind of tying all these people together, but in this specific order. Because you see, if we take back the main three people, Leonard Cohen, Al Pacino, and Dustin Hoffman, Leonard Cohen looks like Dustin Hoffman, and Leonard Cohen looks like Al Pacino, but Al Pacino does not look like Dustin Hoffman and vice versa. So he's kind of the transition between Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman, if that makes any sense. And then you add Anthony Bourdain in between Al Pacino and Leonard Cohen, and you get the transformation. I don't know if this makes any sense whatsoever to any other person, but it makes sense to me, and that's enough. But, to go back to Al Pacino and, putting him aside, there is another rabbit hole to this whole thing, because there is the whole Al Pacino looks like all the Beatles combined, young Al Pacino looks like all the Beatles rolled into one. Again, you may or may not see it. I think I've talked about this to some people, and some of them did not even see it at all, but if you know, you know. And in my opinion, he looks the most like Paul McCartney, but it's probably just because of the hair. Well, again, they all have the same hair technically, but Al Pacino just gives me Paul McCartney vibes, even though Paul McCartney could not fit into this whole ordeal because he does not look like the other people, like Leonard Cohen, etc. There's also this other picture for reference where I thought he really looks like Paul McCartney, but again, people are just putting all the Beatles together and saying he's a combination of all of them, but yeah, this is just a food for thought. So I hope this has created some sort of reflection in your mind, something to think about. If you have nothing to think about one day, just think about this, and it'll be like a sort of challenge or a puzzle that you can try to solve. I think about this pretty often. It resurfaces every 2 weeks or so, and I really like to think about this because I like all of these people. I think they're all remarkable people, and if if they look similar, that means that they have something similar to offer, and that is great things to the world. So thank you for watching.